what makes you so unique. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole. Conversations with Nicole.
Greetings. I am Nicole Everett, the host of Conversations with Nicole, a talk show based here in Tallahassee, Florida, focused on connecting the community through conversations. It is Wednesday, July 15th. Can y'all believe it's the middle of July already? And it's what I call What Women Want Wednesday. What Women Want Wednesday. So this is an interactive live, and I invite you to engage with me and my guest today. So this is an opportunity for the women, the sister in the talk, but the men can chime in as well. But I want to, before we get started, before I talk about my guest and our topics for this evening, invite you to tell us where you are tuning in from. So if you will, just put your city and state in the comments so that we can know who we're talking to and where you are from. I would greatly appreciate it. I see there are about 10, 12. The number keeps going up, 11 so far on the live. So tell me, where are you from? Where are you tuning in from? Let me know. Put it in the comments. While you are doing that, I will tell you about the dynamic ladies that are joining me tonight. They are both clinicians of mental health. July is Mental Health Awareness Month for minorities, and we have been featuring Black and Brown clinicians, therapists, counselors all month long. So we're right on point for tonight. So tonight we're going to be talking about self-preservation and generational investment. And my guests are Shamir Brooks and Dr. Jessica Campbell. So without further ado, help me welcome my lovely guests tonight, Shamir and Dr. Jessica. Yay! Welcome, ladies.
Welcome.
Yes, so glad to have you.
It's good to be here.
So do me a favor. Yes. So do me a favor and tell the folks who you are, where you from. Shamir, we're going to start with you. Where you from, who you are, what you do.
All right. Well, I am originally from what I call the backwoods of Georgia, Boston, Georgia in the house.
Big old Boston.
Big old Boston. And I currently reside here in Tallahassee. I am a holistic health practitioner and formerly trained as a clinical social worker, and I'm an aspiring herbalist. So
okay,
it's good to be here.
Good to have you. All right, Dr. Campbell.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jessica Campbell. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner as well as a family health practice nurse practitioner, and I'm doctoral prepared, and I have been here in Tallahassee for the last 6 months, and I'm originally from Lakeland, Florida.
All right, Polk County in the house.
County in the house, L-Town.
Well, it's a pleasure to have both of you. So, we have talked prior to the broadcast about, what we might cover tonight, and the topic of self-preservation and generational investment came up. So let's dive right in. So let's talk self-preservation. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I look at it like the definition being it's a basic instinct for human and animals. So it's basically designed, where our body is designed to protect, go into protection mode when there's a threat of, danger or death and things like that. And I particularly like self-preservation because it goes back to our physiological response to different things like fight or flight and, what we were basically designed to do. And even though we don't generally run from a bear right now and things like that, our bodies still have certain responses and it plays out in a myriad of mental health and diagnosis these days. And so and that's why I particularly like this topic, because it's natural, it's basic, and in the era we're in right now, we kind of got to go back to those foundations and build a better foundation to alleviate some of the things that we're seeing now, like anxiety, depression, things like that, especially within our community.
Now, what about self-preservation as it relates to women, Black women in particular?
Well, I can say that, for African American women, and by no means am I a representative for every single African American woman, but in reality, even in the workforce, we've learned different techniques and different ways to be able to function and to survive. And I think that survival mode can also increase our anxiety. You can have physiological responses that you see. So self-preservation could be a positive and a negative. It just depends on how you're learning to cope. Substance abuse could be a possible way of you're using for self-preservation. It's a negative, but it's something that you've learned to do. Being stressed, being rigid, panic attacks, all of those are physiological responses to your anxiety or your depression that you may not be dealing with or coping with effectively, but you're learning how to just be in almost a survival mode.
Yeah.
Okay. Good point. Good point. So when we talk about self-preservation, specifically, for African American women, you talked about using something that might be a negative. What might be a positive way that you, as Black women, self-preserve?
I think we talked about this before. Self-preservation could be something as simple as taking a moment and pausing when all of the stress and everything is going around. There's not one definition. We think about yoga, we think about deep breathing, but that doesn't necessarily always apply to every person. It could be something as simple as taking a walk, from a religious standpoint, praying, going to church. Finding that moment of peace for you is presented differently for each person.
Right. And for me, it's also good to look at the cultural implications of it, like where we come from and certain things that we inherited. One of the things that come to heart as a positive, as opposed to, like Dr. Campbell was saying, there's a maladaptive way where we turn to some of us turn to substances to cope with certain things. But then there's that generational part too that can be positive, where you had Big Mama telling you, sit down somewhere, rest your nerves. And those things are still applicable, where we need to just sit and, it could be, like you said, I love using the abundance of nature, and it's free. So it kind of tied into those self-care routines that are not so whimsical, and things that
Exactly.
we do. We bathe, so being intentional about cleansing our sleep hygiene and just focusing in on that is definitely a positive.
But
Some positive.
the big thing to understand is that it doesn't have to be an elaborate process. It can be very simplistic for self-care, to make sure that you just take a moment and breathe, that you can talk to family, that communal. You mentioned Big Mama. I think that communal aspect of having that family ties, be it with church or friends, that positive support system is a form of self-care as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely. So this is we are a little bit jumping the gun, and I know that's because I asked the question, but I want you all to mention these again at the end, when we talk about tips and techniques and
Mhm.
takeaways, as it relates to self-preservation. But I did want to at least introduce the ideas, or some ideas of ways that we do um, preserve ourselves or care for ourselves in meaningful ways, especially, with in the climate that we're in, with COVID, with the social unrest that's been taking place. There's a lot going on right now, right?
Hmm.
For
Yeah.
It
you know
is.
for everybody, but as Black
Hmm.
women, I think as mothers, as caregivers, as spouses or significant others or what have you, we tend to take on a whole lot, and
Mm-hmm.
we are very nurturing and sometimes have that superwoman syndrome where
Oh yeah, we
we
see that
are.
quite a bit. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes,
So we
we
feel
all we
we're
all have it.
yeah, we're superheroes and we got to take on the world and we got to be strong and can't be weak and all of these sorts of things. So, anything that you would like to share as it relates to, that type of mindset and why self-preservation is important for, the women who take on this superwoman mentality.
Well, I think that, looking at it from a medical standpoint, the reality is self-preservation helps with longevity of life and quality of life as well. Unfortunately, people don't realize that stress can impact your blood pressure and you can have complications associated with that. Having anxiety that's not appropriately managed, you can have GI issues or your stomach or abdominal issues. So you can physiologically have an impact if you're not managing this anxiety with appropriate self-preservation. And also, being a superwoman, the analogy I usually give people is that when a plane is crashing and there's the mask, we as superwomen, we want to put the mask on everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
but we're
Mhm.
gasping for air and we can barely put that mask on. And how I tell my patients is, if you can't put that oxygen mask on yourself first, you're not going to be able to care for anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we really need to be able to pause as women and just people as general to understand it's okay to take a break and take care of self first so that you can actually effectively care for other people. But I'm kind of tying into that generational aspect that we'll talk about in a minute as well. We've almost been programmed to perceive that that's our responsibility to care for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I like that example too about putting the mask on yourself first before putting it on someone else. Because if you aren't, in the best of health or the best of care, you're not going to be able to care for somebody else.
Correct.
Mhm.
So, great point.
I've seen that too, where we as caregivers, I always question who's caring for you
Mm-hmm.
when I'm speaking to somebody in a therapeutic session, because you'll hear about, the mama, the children, the husband, the job, and the demands on our times is just incredible. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's incredible, and it's also a part of life. So it's just about managing it with the self preservation, and also being okay with being vulnerable. It's not an ugly word. I know no one wants to talk about us as superwomen being vulnerable, but I think there's strength in that, because that's when, like in this day and age, masks are off. We kind of got to come to terms with who we are,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes we're not well. Sometimes the demands get a hold of us, and in that vulnerability, it manifests itself in so many maladaptive ways in our community, and we've come to be able to kind of live a double life.
Mm-hmm.
Put a smile on at work and come home and drink and pass out. And there's has have to be an intervention
Mm-hmm.
for continuity of care, for lack of better words.
And it goes back to, and I know we're piggybacking to different topics, but it goes back to that generational issue. I can speak for myself. I can't speak for you all, but I was always taught that you had to be better. You had to be at the best of your ability, and that failure was not an option, because you're essentially holding the weight of your ancestors and your generation to be successful. I think we've all been told you need to work harder than everyone else because they're looking at you.
Mm-hmm. You got to be
And
twice as good.
twice as good as everyone else. And so when you hold people up to this standard, it is anxiety producing. And so the concept of not doing well, a lot of African Americans and just people of color feel like that's not an option. So you then have the family secrets
Mhm.
where we don't talk about mental health, we don't talk about the issues. We all have an uncle, a cousin, or someone who is suffering, but we choose to ignore it because that is a sign of weakness. And that is a mentality that we really have to work on our community, because we're hindering our own progress.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Very good point. Very good point. So I'm going to invite the viewers tell us, what does self-preservation look like for you? What does self-preservation look like to you, especially my ladies? I want to acknowledge Karen Kramer. She's here. She is actually part of the mental health counselor of the Big Bend. So thank you for joining us, Karen. So, you
Hey,
know,
Karen.
I think what you mentioned, Shamir, in particular, as it relates to the mask being off. You know, right now
Mm,
during this pandemic, we are being encouraged to put the mask, the physical mask on. But while we are sheltering in place, not being able to be as social and being out and about, we are having to sit with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? And deal with maybe some things that we previously hadn't dealt with because we were
yeah.
so busy living these busy lives, doing all these.
Ignoring everything and using a band-aid. The band-aid's off, and now we have to have the sores are there. They're still there.
Mhm,
Mhm.
mhm, mhm.
Absolutely. And a lot of times we've covered it up in aesthetics. We couldn't get to the hairdresser like we used to. We are in the raw.
Mm-hmm.
And for me as a practitioner, I sound kind of weird, but I really appreciate this space
I do as
because,
well.
okay, you don't have to kind of fumble through the whole glitz and glam and smiling, but really crying inside.
Exactly.
So people are coming and not knowing exactly what to do. I think, like Dr. Campbell was saying, just simplifying it. I'm having a hard time, and I need some help with this.
Right.
Mhm.
So,
Vulnerability.
mhm. And there is help. A lot of times our internal dialogue, that's what we have to face during this time frame is that internal dialogue, has some of it's been inherited, some
Mm-hmm.
that's counterproductive to a person's life purpose. Like, for instance, you have someone who has a college degree and they're very intelligent, and they know how to speak properly and all of that good stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
when it come down to this pandemic, they're coming in like, my memory's low and
Right.
things, you can't concentrate, and I don't know what's going on. Something is wrong with me.
Mhm.
And then you're going to start hearing what's been recidivized.
Mm-hmm.
My mama told me, not to cry, and you got to be strong, and
Exactly.
no knocking no mamas out. I'm a mama too.
Right. But
you
I
know,
wouldn't even, yeah, I'm not even, I want to make sure we kind of specify we are not criticizing our the generation before us. Those were survival techniques that they had. And
Right.
so
yes,
I never will condemn any family member that said that you had to be strong because in that time frame, that was the only technique they knew of. But we have evolved now, and so we can be able to have that vulnerability, and it's okay to have those conversations. And we talked about this before we presented even with our African American men, it's okay to be vulnerable and have those emotional conversations now. And this is the perfect opportunity when you can't shield or hide anything else to
Mhm.
really be able to get that help.
exactly.
Absolutely. So Felicia made a comment. Greetings, Felicia. Thanks for joining us. She said, I admit it has been very refreshing to not wear all the makeup, all the accessories. And that has been so
Yes, Felicia,
Yes,
be
good.
free.
Yes,
yes.
yes, yes. All right. And Desire Brooks, she said that is true. We just have to let it be known that vulnerability is acceptable.
Mhm.
Oh, hey, cousin, I love you,
Okay. Pronounce the name for me.
Deja.
Deja. Okay. All
Mhm.
right. Yeah, no. So vulnerability is okay. I think
Mhm.
that um it's kind of bipolar. I mean, if you think about how we've been maybe conducting ourselves, right? Because we've been like, you got to be strong, you got to be strong. You can't show
Mhm.
weakness, otherwise it's something wrong with you, or maybe it's something wrong with you spiritually. You don't believe
Oh,
in
that
God,
part. Yeah,
Exactly.
that part.
or you the weakest link. I mean, it's all of the mind games and all of the things that we hear externally and internally. Like you said, it's like that negative self-talk.
Right.
So, you know, how do we come out of that? How do we break that? How do we gotta start maybe listening to something that's more encouraging and positive and uplifting to not maintain this. I got to be strong. I can't be weak. I can't be vulnerable because there is liberty in vulnerability.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's I tell my patients all the time, it's almost just like learning how to walk. The reality is you're not going to accomplish this immediately overnight. It takes steps. And I know that you guys have children. You've seen your children fall. They've made mistakes in this process of learning how to be successful. That's the same way here. You're going to have bad days where you still may have some negative self-talk, but it's almost just retraining your brain. It's like a physical activity. It's developing new muscle memory. You learn how to be guarded and to shield your emotions. That was a learned behavior. And as easily as you learn to have those behaviors, you can also learn how to retrain your thought process. And, of course, myself and Shamir, we're going to advocate for therapy because that's our profession. But as a provider, I say that sometimes therapy may not work for you. If you have a religious leader, if you have someone positive in your life, surrounding yourself around those positive people will help you in this progress. So when you have a bad day, who do you have in your arsenal of positivity is what I'm corny with my patients and they just roll their eyes at me, but you want to have a book bag. You want to have different things that you can pull out. You should not have a light bag. So if you're having a bad day, let me try this technique. And if that doesn't work, I have a multiple list of techniques that I can utilize.
Very good. Yes. And we will get to some of those techniques a little later. All right. Well, I think, we can't say enough about self-preservation. We probably more now days than not during this time we hear about self-care as opposed to self-preservation. But preservation means I'm trying to sustain my life, right? And I'm being really intentional about this thing because I want to live and I want a higher quality of life than I previously was having. Or even than maybe my ancestors did because they didn't have the tips, the tools, the techniques that I now have.
Right.
That's true.
Okay.
And I mean, to put it in practice, the whole thing, like, our generations before us didn't come up with the laptops and computers. And of course, there's a learning curve. So we take what we've gotten before and if we didn't come up with the lessons that they've given us, we wouldn't be able to apply and learn that laptop. It's like we take the torch and keep on rolling with it. But one of the things I know you said, asked Nicole, was like, how do we I think that we need to pay homage to where we come from.
Exactly.
And I would say not even and begin the healing process. And I think self-care is a conduit for healing. But we pay homage to where we come from and we don't criminalize it and we don't judge it, in a way, but we can sit in a moment and be like, this is a part of who I am. But then some things we ain't gonna let go, but we just say how, we're gonna evolve from this.
Exactly.
My parents or my leaders and spiritual advisors taught me how to read and write or, read the scriptures and pray and stuff like that. But as we go on our life purpose, we also understand that if we stay in breath and stay breathing and, doing self-care things, that we have an evolution, we have a responsibility to pass on to our next generation.
Right.
So where we using laptops, ain't no telling what they're going to be using. We don't want to criminalize that either. You know what I mean?
Right.
We want to stay in a place where we can receive peacefully the evolution. And sometimes that means visiting, that whatever it is, negative self-talk, those things that keep us stagnant.
Mhm.
So, of course, I advocate for therapy for that because
Yes, we do.
I've seen it work. It helps. And everybody just don't understand. We have to learn a new language. We have to learn how to, speak life over ourselves and those around us where we may have spoke negative before and didn't even realize it. So,
And it goes back to like with the language, one challenge I have as a minority provider and also taking care of patients of color, explaining to them that psychiatric medications are not equating to weakness. It's not a dangerous. I think it goes back, and I'm aware of this. I'm very cognizant of this. You think of Tuskegee, you think of all of these things that have happened to minorities. There is a definite mistrust in providers. Even if I'm a woman of color, there's a mistrust because of the history. And I think it's important for us to be able to relinquish some of those fears and understand that the goal is to try to be well. And so take any avenue we need to be well as the priority.
Okay. Point very well taken. Thank you for sharing that. All right.
Yes.
We're going to shift gears to talk about generational investment. So when we talk generational investment, we're not talking about that you bought a house and that you passing that on to your child, or you own a business and now they're gonna take over the business, or you got a trust form that once you transition from this realm, they're gonna you're gonna bequeath them something. That's not what we talk about when we talk about generational investment, is it?
No.
Okay. Okay, hold on. Before we hold on, because Felicia just had a comment, so I want to share this one. She said, "Ladies, how do you define self-care? How is it different than the daily shower, eating meals, and perhaps listening to music? So many people have so many different definitions."
Miss Felicia, you defined it right there. There are different perceptions. Like we have 3 very unique women here, and I guarantee you we all have different versions of self-care. I'm not going into nature. I'm not doing that. But for me, music may work for me. And that's okay. We're not a cookie cutter group of people. So everyone has their own form of self-care. And as long as it's healthy and it's positive and edifying for you, that's the most important thing. And I think that's what we're both trying to reiterate to everyone here. There is no cookie cutter definition for having self-care. It works differently for everyone.
Yeah. And I think another outcome measure would be the proof is in, your performance. Well, like say for instance, you start saying, well, I'm going to try, praying, for instance, and you do a 21-day, fast and prayer and, and also, giving it some time. And then you also do an evaluation on how your life has changed. So it's just really a better connection to who you are, and also understanding that at some points when I'm thinking healing, when you're healing, that you are rediscovering yourself. So some things ain't gonna work. I want to go, drag racing or anything like that,
Right.
but that might be someone else's self-care. And it may work well for them. It may give them a higher self-esteem, higher self-worth, but I think proof is in the performance, and you'll see that's why I advocate for self-care, because you'll feel it physiologically.
I don't know who that was who made the comment, just smile and relax. Yes, that if you're starting to notice improvement, that is the simplistic way of viewing it. That I love that comment.
Yeah, me too. It's anything that makes you smile and relax. Yep, from the heart. Yep.
Okay, very good. All right. So let's go back. So generational investment. I was being kind of facetious there when I was talking about my thoughts about what generational investment is.
You set us up.
What is generational investment?
Well, I would say, I'm kind of corny too, Dr. Campbell. You know this. So I'm just going to put it out there. Your health is your wealth. Okay. said. And just being knowledgeable about what you're passing on health wise.
Mhm.
And I'm just gonna be honest, it's some women that I see who are going through biological changes, but they manifest it on the outside. You know, they're fussing at the husband, they
Mhm.
fussing at the dog, and it's everybody's fault, you know, but really, I'm just gonna say it. It's just like when we went through puberty, you know, that's something that has to happen. You know, menopause, something that has to happen. And
Mhm.
it's not anything that you can, you know, blame on others. So I want to be careful about and bringing awareness to what we go through as women and how we have the potential to invest, you know, negativity into our outer world. So
Mhm.
that's why, you know, I would say during certain times you got to check in with yourself, check in with where you are in your
Right.
moon cycle, check in with where you are in a, you know, age group, and also start, you know, investing in, you know, where you are and how you can um, take some good tips from it and possibly pass it on to our up and coming women, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Mhm.
So health is your wealth. The best thing you can give somebody is a better you, a healthy
Exactly.
you.
Yeah, I think it's really mindful. You know, I work primarily with adults now in my career, but I work with kids, and you can just see the transition into adulthood. Those negative things that have happened to you as a child really do impact you as an adult, but they don't define you.
Mhm.
And so learning how to identify, okay, am I communicating well to my children? Because they're going to start mirroring my same behaviors when they become an adult.
Mhm.
And it goes back to that strength and that viewpoint of you have to do twice as more as everyone else. My mom got that from her grandmother, and that was passed on to me. And so it's kind of my decision as an adult now to decide that when I do have children, do I want to pass on that same thought process?
Mhm.
Because it's going to impact your workplace, it's going to impact your communication with your partners, and even your interpersonal relationships are impacted by those foundations that you have early on. Doesn't
Mhm.
define you, but it does have an impact for you.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
So with that in mind, you know, again, we're talking intentionality when we're talking about generational investment, right?
Mhm.
Because we want the things that are the morals, the values, the behaviors that we pass down throughout the generations to be beneficial, to be
Mhm.
um,
Absolutely.
uplifting, to be
Exactly.
encouraging, not negative, not, hopelessness, not, you know, limiting because of the skin that we are in as Black
Mhm.
and brown folks, right? Um,
Exactly.
and I know we've experienced that too, even though it's been well, I can't speak for you all, but I have had the experience that while I've been told on one hand you have to be twice as good, on the other hand, I've been told you won't ever be able to do because you are Black, right?
And we have three different generations here, and I can say for myself, I've had that same experience, like where you have to learn how to placate or make yourself more palpable for other people. You don't want to seem as too aggressive, you don't want to be too assertive, but on the same note, you're having to work and have all the tenacity. It's a very conflicting dichotomy that I think a lot of people of color have to suffer for or deal with. And
Mhm.
it's learning how to not assimilate, to still be yourself, but also it's okay to not be perfect. And I
Mhm.
can't speak for you ladies, but I can speak for myself that I have always had the mentality that you have to be successful, but I've learned that it's okay to fail. And I've
That.
learned more from failures than I've learned from my success that I've had in my career.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah.
And having a network is really important.
Hmm.
So Barry said even health issues and eating habits. So yes.
That is generational as well. Yes.
Oh, there's a
Very
cultural aspect of eating with us. We eat when we're happy, we eat when we're sad, we eat when we're frustrated and angry, and it's a very maladaptive way to cope. It's almost like we self-soothe with food. And I understand that it's something that we've had to do as a culture, but it is a huge hindrance for us.
Absolutely. And those are some of those things that research suggests even in our culture, Dr. Campbell, we see a lot of hypertension and
Hmm.
diabetes. We see a lot of that, and it's centered around, our eating habits. And I like to say, some of us are kind of innocent because we are predisposed to certain things because what we passed on generationally. Excuse me. I
Right.
would encourage people to know the stock that you come from, and then we learn how to make changes.
Hmm.
Our generation and the generation before it,
Exactly.
eating, drinking water, certain things like that, and that's a form of self care as
It
well.
is. And exercise releases endorphins that, of
Excuse me.
course, I talked about You okay? Okay.
Hmm.
I talk about medications, but there are simple hormones and endorphins that can be released from just exercising and eating healthy. That can actually produce a euphoria for you as well, that people kind of minimize sometimes the benefit of even just physical activity.
Right.
Hmm.
So again, all very um, needful, intentional investments in ourselves that hopefully we will pass along to our children, our mentees, our other family members who are watching us, right? Because
Hmm.
they are checking us out. They are in tune with what we're doing and learning
Exactly.
learning habits from our actions, right? So she said health issues, eating habits. So definitely diet, exercise. I think we've also talked about, support systems, the types of folks that we hang around. Are we hanging around with people who are, want to see us win and are, striving to win themselves?
Hmm.
Or, are we around folks who are gossiping all the time or, always talking down about somebody or speaking negative?
Yeah.
Right.
Those
Mm.
relationships, um, what are some of the things that we are doing? You talked about placating.
Hmm.
So, you know, a struggle there with trying to be authentically who you are, but not, coming off as abrasive or
Right.
aggressive or angry or, things.
A caricature.
Hmm.
So,
Exactly.
yeah. So, all of those are really things that maybe we haven't thought about um, more intentionally or more specifically, but I think it's great to have this dialogue as it relates to what that generational investment looks like and how to have healthy relationships, healthy lifestyle, and healthy habits. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Shamir, I recall us talking about some thoughts and behaviors of being self-reserved as it relates to generational investment. You want to give a few words to that in terms of that
Yeah.
being
So
self-reserved?
when just going within and just being honest, especially and I go back to the pandemic where the masks are off.
Mhm.
And I think, like Dr. Campbell was saying when we talked off the air, about understanding that the common denominator is you. And don't let me misquote you.
I'm the
Was
queen of
it?
quotes.
I don't want to, but I love that because at some point we do need to be reserved. We do need to say no to others and yes to ourselves and not feeling selfish about it. Because I see that with us as women,
Mhm.
that, a lot of times if we're not careful, we will people please.
Mhm.
But we are that person. We are the one that we need to check in with. We are the one that we need to take a breath to. So with self-preservation, I just want to highlight on, there's power in saying no and not giving an explanation as to why.
Right.
Because we put a lot of energy out there just trying to please others when it may be a time that we need to self-reflect. Well, we need to acknowledge that we don't know what's going on, but I have within me to figure, to walk this path and be well.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay. Very good. Very good. All right. So I think this will be a good time for us to move on to our tips and techniques for self-preservation and generational investment. So what do you ladies think about self-preservation in terms of some techniques that folks can carry with them, the ladies, the sisters can carry with them beyond this broadcast?
Mm-hmm. You want to go
I,
first, Dr.
I,
Campbell?
I think having the check, I always tell people to just breathe and pause, and you want to reflect on yourself and saying, how are we doing? And measure. You may have to measure daily, or it could be hourly. Am I doing okay? Am I being well? And that's something that is not a vulnerability thing, but it's just an assessment of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see, hey, am I kind of going in the direction that I want to go in?
Okay. All right, I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. So just a self check, which Shamir, just also mentioned as well. Um, I think so. What's coming to mind to me right now is what if, um, you feel like you're doing the self check, but you're convincing yourself that you're okay when you're not. So being in
Mm,
denial about,
Right.
where you are.
And that's where having your arsenal, you could say your tribe, you could say your support system. There's different terms, but the
Okay.
reality is having people around you who are positive and positive for your best interest, who can be able to say, you're not doing well right now. Let's reflect and let's talk about what we can do to help you so that you can move forward.
Okay. All right. I like that.
yeah.
All right. So we talked about checking in with yourself and then also having a support system, your tribe, your village that can double check you basically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Those things are just makes a way for healing.
Okay.
I guess one of the takeaways, I love a good challenge. So mine would be more of a challenge because we're like halfway through the year. So um, I would say just prioritizing certain things because we have so much demands on us as women, as Black women,
Mm-hmm.
but making space for self compassion. Um, and that could look like a number of things, keeping a journal and understanding that when your head is spinning, writing a letter to yourself or to someone else that may be going through it. And and that's another way to check in with yourself. You check in with like, how's my tone? How what is my delivery like? So especially those of us who are nurturers and helpers, which
Mm-hmm.
most of us are, and you could, like Dr. Campbell say, check in with yourself by writing a letter to a friend that is going through what you're going through, and check your tone. You'll get some feelings,
Mm-hmm.
about where you are when you do those type of things. So that's a challenge. I want people to practice self compassion.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for people to practice sleep hygiene,
Mm.
restore, you know, restorative sleep. It's a difference in drinking till you pass out or popping some pills and, pass out, but actually being intentional about about your sleep,
Right.
cutting the social media off,
Mm-hmm.
um, things like that, just good sleep hygiene. Also practicing some joy,
Mm.
you know,
Have you all been hearing the term black joy lately?
I have.
black. I have no.
Yeah, I've
You
been.
gotta tell me that, Dr. Campbell. What's that, Miss Nicole?
So I've been hearing it as a form of protest. Um, Black joy being a form of protest, and just I think I see it more as a healing technique.
I do too.
Yeah, it not necessarily protest, but I mean I kind of get that too. But yeah, I see it as a encouraging us to be joyful during this time, to find joy in maybe some things we haven't found joy in before, or maybe, like I've been walking with the OB Fit Mega H Challenge here in Tallahassee, and I have been amazed at the things that I have driven by twice a day, every day. But on these walks, I'm seeing things that I just never saw before, even though I pass by them every single day, twice a day. Different flowers or,
Art. Yeah,
pathways or whatever. And it's just like,
exactly.
wow, and it's made me kind of joyful to be quite honest with you. So yeah, I see it again as a healing mechanism, if you will.
Absolutely. And that reminds me of a quote my mentor, Javasha Lang, she sent me a quote about, oh goodness, I don't want to misquote it. I know I got it wrong. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation that is an act of political warfare by
Hmm.
Audre Lorde. So when you said the Black joy being like a movement,
It's been
Uh-huh.
yeah,
great.
it is written. It's political warfare. We live at the intersection. Most of us Black people live at the intersection of so much disparities from health, mental, physical,
Hmm.
social. So caring for yourself is definitely political warfare. So I would
Okay.
And just
also encourage
embrace.
people, yeah, be confident in it.
Okay. What did you say, Dr. Campbell?
One thing I loved about the Black Joy, you'll see a lot of young people and even older people embracing art and just finding all of these techniques about themselves that they never really focused on because they were so consumed with work, balance, and life. And it's just amazing to see how much people can actually bring out a different part of their brain that they haven't been utilizing.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So what about generational investment? Any thoughts around that in terms of how we promote that, put that into practice? Like some of it is synonymous, but is there something else maybe more intentional around that?
I think mentoring is really important, that we find these positive mentors to help the next generation. Also, just working on that family communication and dialogue, having those difficult conversations, being able
Absolutely.
to say, I was hurt and this is why you hurt me, and
Mhm.
how can we move forward with that? And that requires a lot of strength, I think, to be able to put your guard down and have that open communication to ensure that the next generation doesn't mirror the same behaviors that the previous families had done before.
I love
Mhm.
that. I love that. I love
Yes, yes, and that was actually what I was going to recommend as well, Dr. Campbell. Just learning how to have those difficult conversations starting at home, and it could be something, it could be small things. I wouldn't say just jump right out if you haven't,
No.
done, conflict resolution and things like that.
Right.
But it may start with something as simple as planning a family meal,
Mhm.
somebody make find the recipe, somebody make the grocery list, but that's all a conduit of communication.
Mhm.
And, after a while, it wouldn't be so awkward to have those tough ones. So it's a
Mhm.
practice positive communication.
Right.
Mhm.
Learning how to ride the bike, learning how to walk. It takes steps.
Mhm.
Mm.
I would like to add on to that and encourage folks to have family meetings.
Oh,
Um, Me and my family, and when I say my family, talk about my parents, my sister, and my son, have had family meetings over the years. It's been a while since we've had one, but kind of on an annual basis where we kind of went over our business, whether it
Mhm.
was, you know, the and we kind of had a checklist of sorts, but not really. But where our accounts were, um, what medicines we were on, who, just just pertinent information about us that we probably would not regularly know. But if something were to happen, we would know because we've had this meeting and have shared this information,
Mhm.
amongst one another. So I think that is a great way of checking in with one another and just being aware of what's going on. We kind of get busy with our daily lives, and we are in three different areas. I mean, I'm at the top of the state, they're at the bottom, and my son is in New York. So
Wow.
we get together a couple of times a year, maybe, and maybe once a year with him because he kind of only comes home once a year, but to have those discussions and be up to speed on one another, I think is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. It makes me also want to encourage people like in my family, we are extremely close,
Hmm.
and it took me getting educated to kind of learn how not to just be, because, and it's a generational thing. We will ask what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
unwarranted. We want to know. We at the front door, and that's, we're a little aggressive with it, but we get together so much. But when we do get together, during those times of eating and all that good stuff that we do, start having those conversations about your legacy, what you want to, what is our family known for,
Hmm.
and start letting the little ones hear that, because a lot of times they hear about, you know, the fights, the robbery, the negative stuff, and we have a good time talking about that.
Hmm.
But all in all, I want us to do better about leaving a legacy of pride from what our ancestors truly came from.
Hmm.
So I love that when you get together, you talk about what's going on in our lives, and
Hmm.
then how it ties back to generation. Let our children hear us having conversations about the positive thought that we come from.
Hmm. Absolutely. Okay. Very good. Well, I think we have covered the tips and techniques and takeaways. So hopefully, the viewers have found this beneficial.
Yeah.
Shamir. So thank you, ladies. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all of that. So Shamir is a poet, and she has so graciously offered to share a poem with us about mental health. So Shamir, take it away.
And maybe you all can help me name this one. It's still up in the air, so I'm open
Okay.
to feedback. So the hardest thing for Queen to believe is that she is free. You see, there's no systematic approach in place to the healing of her inherited PTSD, yet she be intellectual, so she unknowingly tried to mask the pain with consuming several degrees. And at the end of it all, this queen still wasn't pleased. But
Mm,
then higher meditation forced her to face the years from running from her reality. At times, she was your whore, evidence shown with the 4 children she bore.
mm,
At times, she was perceived to be a coward, embracing defeat with the blood-stained clothes she wore. And even with several degrees and an awareness of her spirituality, this queen still yearned for more and more until there was no more.
mm,
No more lying, no more games, no more dabbling between fear and insane, no more late night tears in vain. No more speaking to those who are truly dead. You see, she's become enlightened ever since she was ignited with what the truth said. Be still. And now Queen is learning balance in a place where Ogun meets Oshun, where Yin meets Yang, where B meets Bear. Queen now beginning to understand that she is sovereign to reign everywhere,
mm,
anywhere. Unapologetically, spiritually, energetically, she be coming free. And let's talk about her freedom. Her freedom brings about a sweet dance where there's a release of a trance, and her laugh holds the power to break the shackles designed to oppress our men. And she's beginning to learn to wield them like one would label a magician. It's something like turning 15 cents into a dollar. Using only her eyes to enforce so much discipline, her love would make you want to holler. And her grace is a taste that is universally desired and required to sustain life. No earthly man could consume her, so at this point, she's nobody's wife. She becoming unshackled, unchained, and free. And she tells her people, come, stay properly tuned in to me. And that may mean cut off your MSGs and your IGs and FBs and receive love organically. And I
Yeah.
speak freely of her because she is my mother. She is my sister. She is me. And together through healing, we are becoming free. Thank you.
Woo! Yes, yes, yes.
Goodness. Beautiful.
Very nice.
Miss
Very
Shamir,
nice.
can I steal some of those quotes when I talk to my patients?
Just call me downstairs. I'll come do
We'll
it.
talk about it.
Very beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we
Yeah,
got
thank
some look, we got some hand claps here. All right, and
you.
Nikki said great discussion, ladies. Appreciate it. All right, so
Thank
we are about to wrap it up, but before we do, if you all will tell folks how they can connect with you, if that's possible.
Well, absolutely. I'm actually developing a nonprofit community outreach, and as of now, I would love for people to connect with me through email, earthhealing01@gmail.com.
All right, I'm putting it in the comments now. Say it one more time for me.
Mm-hmm. Earthhealing01
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at Gmail.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And that's it. Hit me
All right.
up on my email and let's talk about spiritual, physical assessments and getting good vibes.
Very good. Very good. All right, Dr. Campbell. Time. It's okay. No pressure.
Well, I work in an inpatient psychiatric hospital, so typically I'm taking care of patients during the acute stress moment. But I definitely would say that Appalachia Center, we have the mobile response team. We also have different resources that I will definitely provide for you, Ms. Nicole, so that you can be able to express in the community. We have suicide hotline and just different resources that you all can utilize as well.
Absolutely. So we'll get that in the comments so that folks can access that. And that's right here in Tallahassee,
Yes.
Behavioral Health Center. So thank you for that. All right. Well, this has been really good. Really good. Really good. Before we go, I definitely have to thank the viewers for tuning
Yes.
in and
Thank
for
you.
their comments and questions. We really appreciate that. Thank both of you ladies for your time and your gifts and your talents. We appreciate you taking a moment to talk about self preservation and generational investment and giving us some tips and techniques and tools that we can take away. So, thank you. But
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
my pleasure, my pleasure. Also, before we go, I have to invite folks to subscribe to the Conversations with Nicole YouTube channel. Subscribing and supporting, and we need all the support we can get. This broadcast will be posted on the YouTube channel in a few days. So, by all means, go there, like, share, and get the word out about what we're doing here. Again, July is Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. We are speaking to Black and Brown
Yes.
counselors and therapists all month long on Mondays and Wednesdays at 10
Yes.
p.m. Eastern, right here on Conversations with Nicole. So tune in, tune in, tune in. All right. So we are right at 1 hour. And again, I want to thank you both for your time. Derry gave us a hands up and a prayer. So I think that means she liked it. Very good. All right. Well, you ladies have a great evening and
You as well.
we'll see our guests next time.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
All right.
Thank you.